It's June 2020, so if my sideburns appear like they've been attacked by scissors, it's because that is what happened. Today I'm going to be making a follow-up to my video reviewing the 32 Borough Council logos of London by taking a look at some of the most notable council logos of days past. This is going to be a slightly less structured video and more of a just light-hearted look back at some of London's design history. So let's take a look. Firstly, for those of you from outside the UK, welcome. I'm not sure how you got here, but I'm glad that you are. I feel I should maybe give you a little bit of context. In my previous video, I was pretty down on the range of mediocre coat of arms based logos. This is quite a culturally specific thing, and I can imagine how in a different context, in like the States, a coat of arms is going to appear quite unique and stand out. Here in London, meanwhile, you can't swing a proverbial cat without hitting some piece of heraldry. It seems like every other pub on the corner has its own coat of arms. There are even literally over a dozen pubs just within London called the King's Arms. Here's a coat of arms, for example. Which lofty entity does it belong to? The Twinings Tea Company. This is the Twinings Company crest, not to be confused with this different crest, which you see on every box of their tea bags, which belongs to the Queen. This is because Twinings holds what's called a royal warrant of appointment, which are basically bragging rights a company can use to say that they have supplied to the British royal family. Over 600 UK companies hold a royal warrant, so you can see this crest used by all sorts of companies, providing everything from tailoring to carpeting to jam. This is partly why I find a badly executed crest so underwhelming as a logo for municipal government. When Westminster Council make Twinings' poorly vectorized crests look good, well, that's just not my cup of tea. Speaking of that auto-traced disgrace, once upon a time, Westminster had actually a logo you could use today quite successfully. It was used from the 70s up until sometime probably in the 90s. This recursive chevron design is almost reminiscent of a Sierpinski triangle. It's quite fractal-like. It works really well as a modernist take on the shield within a coat of arms. Of course, this tight line patterning would need to be tweaked for use on screens, but with a bit of work, this would make a very clean, modern, and distinctive logo, which makes it an even bigger shame that they swapped it out for this. Speaking of bad coats of arms and squandered brand equity, before 2015, Kingston upon Thames actually had quite a simple shield of 3 fishes and a crown motif for their primary logo, so much more legible and ownable than their whole current situation. I'm particularly fond of this cover from a 1967 guidebook. Can you imagine how great this would look as a Twitter avatar? Instead, we have this smashed cockroach. On the topic of cool shields, hello Merton, what the hell? You're just gonna leave this in a dusty history book over this. This is why we can't have nice things. Quite a few commenters on the previous video called Haringey their least favorite, and I understand, I get it. But personally, I will take a flawed logo that evokes hatred over a flawed logo that evokes indifference 9 times out of 10. I also mentioned in that video that what happened to the previous logo was far more egregious to me, so let me explain that. Here is Haringey's original electric flash logo from 1965, designed by modernist architects and industrial designers John and Sylvia Reed. It's just a magnificent piece of work. It's so boldly graphic and confident. The first TV broadcast in the UK was sent out from Alexandra Palace in Haringey, and that's what this design evokes. Unfortunately, here is what happened to it in 2007. Now, I'm going to make a reference which clearly cements me as an aging millennial, but I cannot put it better than Strongbad did back in the early 2000s.
I guess the no-loafing sign could take a cue from the fast food, soft drink, and bad sports team industries to combat sluggish sales and decades of losing with a slick logo redesign. First you squish it, skew it, and turn it all around. squish it, spew it, turn it all around. Now it's time to play Color Wheel Roulette. No whammies, no whammies. Oh, ouch, man.
It's almost as if they went to the do not do section of every brand identity manual and went, yeah, let's do all of that. It's just so disrespectful. My heart breaks when I see this. But let's just rewind and admire this logo as it was originally intended. Or even better, this fantastic shield variant, which I would literally stab a loved one with an Apple Pencil to get my hands on an enamel pin version of this logo. Now, Islington is proof that it is possible to improve a logo by reverting to a coat of arms if you make the effort to execute well. Their old logo is certainly simple and bold, that's not the problem. Personally, for me, it evokes a magazine masthead more than a logo. I could easily imagine it being used for a full-color supplement in The Independent or some other newsprint beginning with I. Slightly more importantly, tall, skinny logos are just unwieldy. Vertically oriented logos are rare in the wild. The overwhelming majority of logos are landscape or close to square. With social media avatars and app icons now, it's more important than ever to have a logo that works in a square format. Also, for no particular reason, take a look at this amazing cover from 1986. I feel like Austin Powers might approve. But the prize for the logo most of its era has to go to this former logo for Barnet Council. It's using Letraset Pump, which, as far as typefaces go, is a little bit,
Your fish are dead.
Yeah, I know. I can't get them out of there.
While it seems we now all associate this font and its various cousins with the 70s and 80s, it actually has quite a history. It stretches all the way back, in fact, to the birth of modernist architecture and design in the 20s and 30s at the Bauhaus School of Art in Germany, but that's a video for a different day. Hammersmith and Fulham get runner-up for this 80s logo, which would look completely at home on a pair of overalls at your local mechanic. Hounslow's current logo is actually quite good, but there is just something quirky and interesting about this 70s logo of theirs. It's like part H, part chess rook, part Twister ice cream. Despite my obvious oversight of not recognizing Battersea Power Station, I stand by my low score given to Wandsworth for their Skyline logo. But if you are a fan, get ready to fill your boots with this duo from Croydon, one 80s and one 90s. You just don't see that serpentine font around anymore. I think it lives exclusively in the basement of secondhand bookshops on the covers of bad sci-fi novels. Here's also a post-Y2K logo from Bexley. Seen altogether as a set, I feel like the weaknesses of this concept shine through. It just looks generic and clip-arty, especially for those not acquainted with local landmarks. It actually takes a lot of skill and time to take a piece of architecture and turn it into a good graphic symbol, and none of these logos have invested either resource into their efforts. London's greatest natural landmark, of course, has to be the River Thames itself, and Tower Hamlets and Greenwich both have made specific reference to its geography in their previous logos, perhaps because they actually share some of its most distinctive bends. Most improved has to go to Lambeth Council, who I feel have quite a handsome logo now, but they seem to have spent quite a bit of time wandering in the typographic wilderness before they arrived to where they were going. Poor Newham, who came at the bottom of the logo shootout, actually had something a little bit more interesting going on previously. This stylized N probably wasn't setting the world on fire, but I think it actually was more successful than a similar concept that Enfield tried to pull off. Nice pun, by the way. But when you look at where they went from here on the next version, you can kind of still see the line of the N in this broken ribbon device, but then it completely just disappears like a vestigial tail by the time we get to the present day. It's just not that difficult to imagine an alternative universe where they leaned into their original N logo and came up with something quite distinctive, simple, and modern. To finish, I have 2 Easter eggs to share with you. Firstly, while researching my initial video, I made a lot of use of the Wayback Machine to establish the dates when current logos were introduced. Let me assure you, there are some absolute corkers amongst those old websites, but my favorite, purely for its abuse of Photoshop effects, has to go to Havering. It looks like Barnet weren't the only fans of this particular flavor of font, except that Havering chose it in 2005. Finally, there is a logo that I completely forgot to include in my original breakdown video. Somehow I missed this one. Probably because the London borough of Walford is the fictional setting of the long-running British soap opera EastEnders. This image actually comes from a fan wiki, so I was slightly dubious at first about its origins, but then I was able to verify its usage on screen with this screenshot. Now, between this logo and this logo, hands down, I have to give it to Walford. The typography is cleaner and more legible, the color is fresher, the swoosh, while it's still a swoosh, is at least symmetrical. In fact, in light of this new evidence, I may have to retroactively crown Barking and Dagenham the worst council logo in all of London. They were basically simultaneously parodied and outshone by a production designer at the BBC who probably threw this together in 20 minutes. A huge thank you goes out to the amazing work of the @LCC Municipal account on Twitter. This video wouldn't have been possible without their research, and basically all the old logos in this video were provided from their archives for me very kindly. There is a fantastic article on their blog called The Lost Logos of London's Boroughs. If this is the sort of thing that you geek out over, you should absolutely go and give them a follow. Secondly, I want to thank you for watching all the way until the end. This channel is still quite new, so if you enjoy these videos about logos, fonts, and design, please do all the YouTube things, engage the algorithms, and it just helps more people to discover these videos, and I really would appreciate that. I'm currently working on another long-form video all about Microsoft's default fonts, but my plan is to go back and do another logo roast and rank in perhaps a little while. I think I should extend my horizons beyond just London next. I'd love to hear what you think. Please leave me any questions you have or suggestions for things you'd like to see me cover in the future. My name's Linus. I have been ranting about logos. I hope to see you again in a future video.